Today we're going to use this sample data to learn more about spreadsheets and how you can use them to organize your raw data, clarify the data for you and your audience, quickly learn about data using a pivot table, and how to dig deeper into the data with graphs and statistical analysis using an online tool called StatsCloud. One quick point before we start, this data is a mix of true and falsified information. It's supposed to be a learning tool and shouldn't be used to draw any real conclusions. So just a quick spreadsheet review. So the spreadsheet is organized into columns and rows. Each column can have a header that explains the data in that column. Each box is called a cell and should contain a single piece of information. Traditionally, each variable is organized into columns. Sometimes each level of the IV is in a different column. For that data, it would look something like this. So if we took our urbanization and richness data and placed rural, suburban, and urban and had our different richness levels. Data formatted this way is great for quick analysis. I can use a formula to solve for the average. So I would click, click here, hit equals average. It's automatically going to select B2 through B32, which is exactly what I want. And I can hit enter. I can also do the standard deviation that way. So equals standard deviation, and it's predicting it because I have my labels there. It can do the count equals count, and it will only count the number of numeric values. You can use that to count alpha values as well. So anything, I don't know why it doesn't auto-select this one. That's a little weird. And so I can also click and then hover over that dot and drag across, and I can get all of that information from formulas, right? That's a great tool. But unfortunately, by doing this, I've lost a lot of information when it's organized this way compared to here, where I have the recorder, the date, the location, the temperature, what the weather was like. So I can only associate those richness values with one other variable when I'm organized the way the data is organized in this tab. So helpful, not as helpful. A lot of data now is coming in from like remote sensing or from tools that generate just massive amounts of data. And so we really need to get used to dealing with data in a spreadsheet like this. This very robust and sometimes overwhelming amount of information. So some of this is going to be your IV, some of it's your DV, and likely some of it you're not going to use. So here's what I would do to start. First of all, clarify your headers, because a long header is going to get really cluttered and confusing. So we want to keep these nice and short, but still give you and your group more information. And so I like to make a notes tab. And so here I have all my headers, and then I also have more information about them. And obviously having this before you went out and collected your data would have been best. It explains military time. I've noticed the location in this spreadsheet is written both as decimal degrees and as the minutes and seconds. So I've given some information on how to convert that if that was something they wanted to do. And so this explanatory information is very common to have with big studies. It actually has a name. It's called metadata. And that's just the data that explains the raw data. So once you've clarified your metadata, you can check your raw data for errors or places where clarity can be improved. I decided to split the weather data into two groups since the intensity of the sun is always measured, but the rain or the wind only exists sometimes. So you can see we had like windy sometimes, we had partly cloudy. We also had mostly sunny, which I decided to get rid of as I simplified. So I have sun, and then I'm going to put other weather like wind and rain in this column. So that's a way to simplify and clarify the data and keep each cell only containing one piece of information. Another thing I would check is that any columns with quantitative data, like our temperature column, only includes the numbers, not like degrees C or something like that. So you would just write a 2 for 2 degrees Celsius, and then you could put Celsius up here with temperature, or I wrote it in my notes. So temperature in Celsius at the time and place the data was collected. So more information. It's best to keep your units in that header because the spreadsheet can only do calculations if the cells are free of all letters. If you put any letters in that box, it's going to think it's a word. It's going to treat it as a word. So after you've checked that numerical information, you want to check the qualitative information. Spelling errors, additional spaces, even sometimes a capital letter. I have seen those sorts of differences and errors in a spreadsheet cause huge issues down the road for groups trying to do an analysis on the back end, because the data analysis tools don't understand. They can't predict, they can't see a misspelling and know what you meant. An extra space bar makes it look like a completely different word to a computer. So if you highlight a column and you go to the insert drop down or the insert and click drop down, it will actually make all of these words a drop down. And see, I thought I had 3 categories, but here I have forest, I have rural, I have suburban spelled wrong, suburban spelled correctly, and suburban with a space after it. So I'm going to take the ones that I actually want and color them. So I want rural, I want forest to be rural, I want urban. Urbanization is there just because it's the top, so I'm not worried about that. So now I can go to any of these that are not my preferred and choose one of the colors, and that will regroup it back into one of the 3 categories. So you can see I've got my forest, I've got my suburban with a space that I can make suburban without the space. And so I'm just kind of using that trick to find all the things that wouldn't get classified with my 3 goal groups. In the future, you make this drop down before you collect your data, and then you'll just be able to use the drop down as you fill in your spreadsheet. So what's next? So I could go in and keep doing all of this and waste our time, but I've actually created a clarified data tab. Click done and get rid of this. So here I have fixed all my urbanization levels. I have gone in and changed my sun and moved the windy and the rainy, which there was only 1 instance of rain. I've pulled all that out to the side, so that is all clarified now. And why did I make a new tab? Well, I like to correct my mistakes with a copy of the raw data. I want to preserve that raw data in its original form. So I've included those corrections. The latitude and longitude really do need a correction, like some are in degrees, some are in the degrees, minutes, seconds, some are in degrees, minutes, seconds, and on 2 lines. All of that is going to need to be clarified if you were using this information in like mapping software, if you were feeding that into a computer. Since using maps isn't a part of this lesson, I actually made 1 more copy of this tab and only included the things I want to use. So there's no recorder anymore, there's no date anymore, there's no location. It's just the variables that I think I may want to analyze. And so if you want to make your own duplicate tab, what you do is you can right click and click duplicate. And then to delete a column, you would highlight it, right click, and delete the column. So that's an example of how you could simplify your own data. So far, we've clarified and simplified the data, but we haven't actually learned anything about the trends or the meaning in this data. So stay tuned. That's coming in part 2.